Hello guys, and welcome to another video. Today I want to be talking about my top books of my entire life basically, and I apologize for the camera setup. I have not found a camera that I like. I have not found anyone that's affordable enough. It's been a bit of a thing that I've been looking through because I cannot afford a $4,000 camera, but it's like the perfect one that I want for what I want to do. But anyway, we're just going to keep going like this. So I want to talk about, yes, as I said, the top books of my life, the ones that I continue to think about, the ones that were a 5-star for me, and the ones that I would reread if I was in the mood. So a lot of these are ones that I've finished in a whole day, the ones that I've finished in 2 days. It usually takes me around a week to finish a book normally. These ones were obviously outliers in that, and that they took me a couple of days or one day to finish, which I think that could be because I had the most time on my hands. It could be because of the mood I was in, because of the vibe that I was feeling from the book at the time. So take this with a grain of salt, because these top reads could definitely just be how I was feeling when I read them, which I think that lots of 5 stars for me come from that, because I am such a mood reader. I don't have a TBR. I just go through what I want to read and look off my bookshelf, and I take the one that I want to read. So I have about 11 books. I have about 11 books to go through today. A couple of them are on loan with my friends, or I did them through an audiobook and I didn't want to purchase the copy itself, mainly because if I read it on audiobook, maybe that is the reason that it was a 5-star for me, because of the voices and the narration, that kind of thing. I definitely put that into play in terms of the vibe and the aesthetic and the feeling that I get when I read it. I'll go through my books now. Thank you for watching. The first book that I want to talk about is The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. So I know that lots of people, obviously since that Prime series? The Prime series came out. I didn't watch that. I've saw snippets on TikTok and around the place, but I picked up this book at an op shop, and I liked the spine because it's kind of that muted yet also fluoro colour that it is, and I thought, I wonder what this book is, and I picked it up and I recognised the title from all of the hype that it was getting from that Prime series. So yeah, let's get into it. The Summer I Turned Pretty, it's about a girl named Belly, and she goes to this same beach house every single year with her family and meets up with these 2 boys there. So it's her and her brother, and they go on a little road trip and they spend it in the summer house over there. So basically, she's had this crush on this one guy the whole time. It's a very young adult book. She comes back to this summer house and she's gone through puberty and she's becoming a woman, and a lot has changed in that year at school that she's had. And she comes back to this house, and the 2 boys there on the cover, the 2 boys realize that, she's not just a little girl anymore. She's not just, brother's little sister anymore. And Conrad and Jeremiah, her 2 boy crushes, they're the love interest, kind of becomes like a love triangle between them, where you've got lots of different emotions that Belly is feeling towards the both of them, but she does not know who to pick. It basically just talks through how she's feeling, what's going on. There's a couple of events that take place, and I basically, maybe because of its size, but I finished this in 2 days. I read half of it in one day and the other half in the other day, and that was in like 2 chunks of reading, which usually I get bored, I get distracted, I look at the page and put it down, or something pulls me away, which I'm trying to work on, but this one did not. This one had me hooked, and I was staying up late to read it, which is a telltale sign that I liked it. So that's basically The Summer I Turned Pretty. Of course, I have also read To All the Boys I Loved Before. Of course, that is like a major Netflix film when it came out, and so I do really love Jenny Han's novels. I think that they're a good, nice little escape from the everyday. I read this just as I graduated from high school, so I was kind of still in that young adult area time. and it just really resonated with me because of, I don't know, had that otherworldly impact to it. It was kind of what I was wanting at the moment, to get away from everything. It's a very good summer read if anybody was wanting anything to do with the summer. The second book, I think everyone has heard. It blew up on TikTok, blew up on BookTok, it blew up everywhere, and that is Normal People by Sally Rooney. I know that this was, I'm not sure if it was shortlisted or if it actually was on the list for like those best books, the ones that are going to go down in history. It's going to become a classic. There's lots of talk about this book being something that everyone should read and everyone should know, and it's going to become one of those ones that we canonize and look back on later in life and people study in school, that kind of thing. In terms of me, that dual plotline is what I really enjoyed. How, not necessarily in their perspective, but it follows exactly their thought processes, and you can see that they really are normal. They are very normal people, as the title suggests. And it's something that when it's going through those motions and it's going through those feelings that they have, and it's just very like smooth sailing all the way through the book, and you've got these conflicts that are happening that you wouldn't expect there to be conflicts. You wouldn't expect them to be something that the characters find so confronting, but that really is the entirety of a normal life, is that those tiny little things might become a huge thing to you. And so you've got your two characters, Connell and Marianne. Marianne is that like weird girl that you'd have in school, the one where, you know, she has her own opinion, she's got her own things going on, she doesn't really want to be in school, she wants to go spread her wings and go somewhere else. And Connell is that classic peaked in high school kind of guy, but he has got a soft side for Marianne. The two characters, they weave in and out of each other's lives, and I think that that is the part that makes it so interesting, and that's what made it become something that people are talking about as being a new classic, the one that's going to be studied in school, is because they weave in and out of each other's lives. They weave and they flow through it, and they go through the motions. They have different partners, they have different experiences separately and together, and I think that that is what makes it so unique, is because you have those romance novels that it's just the characters meet and then they spend all their time together and then they fall in love and happily ever after, and that's kind of like your basic line through that. However, this one, it's held over multiple years, and it's held over multiple different eras in their life, times in their life, and it really highlights how sometimes it's the right person at the wrong time, or sometimes it's just the right person, and you're allowed to go through partners and you're allowed to go through experiences and have different people be the highlight of that year or the highlight of that time in your life. And some people do come back. I finished this in about a day. I probably had like the last 50 pages left on the second day, and I've got 2 copies of this. My other copy, this is my newer copy because my other one was completely bashed up by myself. That was my fault. But yeah, and so I got a nice new edition copy. I'm going to talk about another book now. This one is actually, I did on audiobook, which I felt like added to that different vibe that I was getting for it, and that is Daisy Jones and the Six. So I'm sure you've heard about Daisy Jones and the Six. It's one of those books that people love or they hate it, and I think that is a lot to do with the unlikability of the characters. You're not supposed to like them, and that is something that I think is really unique to Taylor Jenkins Reid, who is the author of Daisy Jones and the Six. So she has these characters that feel very human and they feel very real to the reader, and I think that that is what makes her so attention grabbing. So on my list today, I think there's 2 books by her, that Daisy Jones and the Six, and then another book by her that I fell in love with and I read really quickly, or I listened to really quickly, and I think that that is the reason, was because they don't have to be liked, but you understand why they're doing it, or you understand their feelings, and you can really connect with the characters each individually. And so with Daisy Jones and the Six, it's as you guys probably know, because I'm sure that you guys have read it. If you haven't, I do really recommend this one. It's got multiple different character lines. You've got all those different characters, and they have each a little section to themselves, and you can follow their different train of thoughts in this chronological event order that's happening. You've got, of course, Daisy Jones and this band that she is in. It goes through this very unique period of music time. There's lots of references to different rock and roll, different bands, different things that were going on in the era that it's in. You hear about all of their different things that went on in the band. It's kind of that classic, very much reminded me of Fleetwood Mac, very much reminded me of those like dating within the band, what's going to happen, people are shipping them together, people want them to get together but they really cannot, and they really don't like each other but they secretly do, that kind of thing. The audiobook I listened to on Spotify with my premium subscription to that, and the audiobook that I listened to had all the different perspectives and all the different characters in a different voice, and I think that's what brought them to life. And as it was being read to me, it speaks in that first person of the character that it's being read by, and so it made that voice I just resonate with. I know who that is. I know who that is. And I think an audiobook was a great choice for this book. I don't think I would have gotten the same effect if I had read it. I'm not sure. I've never read it by itself. I've only ever done the audiobook. So that's Daisy Jones and the Six. So the next book I have is Funny Story by Emily Henry. So I'm sure you guys have heard about Emily Henry by now. I'm sure you guys have heard of Funny Story. This is her newest book. It would have been this year that this one has been released. I, of course, ran out, grabbed it, read it as soon as I could. I finished it in a day, which is quite unique. So it's basically about two key characters. You've got Daphne and you've got Miles. So Daphne and Miles, they seem really opposite at the start, and I've had lots of people tell me that they did not like Miles at the start, but he is going through a pretty tough time. Basically, they're the two people that were in relationships beforehand, which would be Peter and Petra. Peter and Petra were best friends, and Peter was with Daphne and Petra was with Miles. And then Peter and Petra ran off together, and it was a huge big thing. Obviously Miles was distraught, obviously Daphne was distraught, and that's how they end up living together. It was because obviously Petra and Peter moved in together. They kind of did like a relationship swap. You kind of go through all of the different things that's going on in Daphne's mind. Mainly, I associated myself with Daphne the most. She's going through which job that she wants to take. She's feeling so connected to the area that she's in because it just reminds her of Peter all the time. You just kind of go through that very nice, calming, wholesome, like a warm hug that is Emily Henry's books. And you see Daphne and Miles's connection to each other, and you watch them grow and you watch them flourish and you watch it become a really lovely story. The next book I have is Lessons in Chemistry. So Lessons in Chemistry I also did on audiobook. It took me 2 days to finish on audiobook, and I flew through it, which audiobooks are generally slower, as you guys probably know, but this one I just went boom, and then I was there. Lessons in Chemistry, it is one of those ones that I think was also voted for like a modern classic, one that's going to go down in history, it's going to be studied in school, and that's because it represents the way women are viewed so uniquely. In the time that it is, I think it's the 60s, I'm not entirely sure when it's set, but it's about this lady, and she becomes a cooking channel host, and she is actually a chemist, and she went through a pretty tough time because not many chemists are women. It's a very male dominated field. There's a tragedy that happens with the husband, so they're going through a lot of things as a family unit, but she's very intelligent, and she just keeps persisting with her chemistry. She keeps persisting with making sure her daughter is educated and making really interesting meals for her, because really it's just chemistry. Cooking is just chemistry. These kinds of things is just chemistry. And she goes into this cooking show. She becomes a host for it, and she is loved by all of the stay-at-home mums. She's loved by all of the women that are watching her show, cooking her meals, and just being inspired and feeding their brains with these intellectual things. And people don't expect the women to understand what she's saying, but really they are. And it's kind of going through her experiences on this presentation show That's how she becomes really popular, she becomes really famous, and it became one of my favourite books. It was also done on audiobook, so those voices really helped me connect to the character a lot more. The next one we have is Lovely Bones, or The Lovely Bones, I should say, by Alice Sebold. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This book, it's very old. I picked it up at a secondhand bookshop, and I recognised the title from lots of clips that I've seen on TikTok of the film. And I didn't really have any idea what it was. I knew the start, but I did not know what would go on in it. And I finished this book in a day. And considering it is 328 pages, but look at, like, the words were so tiny. I could not, like, that is small text for me. I'm used to big text. I like having big text, but this one I found was really small, but it did not faze me. I started it midday and I finished it by the end of the day. Like, I did not put it down. I don't even think I ate through that whole day because I was just reading. I'll read you the first line because that's the one that everyone's heard. My name was Salmon, like the fish, first name Susie. I was 14 when I was murdered on December 6th, 1973. So it tells you right off the bat what's going on, and then it goes into that backstory that is quite graphic. I was quite surprised because lots of people, when they're talking about this book, say that it's studied in their school, say that they were traumatized by this book, traumatized by the film, which I totally agree. I can understand how, like, a 10, 11-year-old would be absolutely terrified of this book. She's looking down from heaven as she's been murdered, and she's looking and seeing the different ways that people are in her life are experiencing her death, experiencing their loss, and move on through that. And she's looking at their relationship, she's looking at how they're feeling, and she's kind of comforting them. It takes a very interesting supernatural turn towards the end. Not what I was expecting. It did kind of make me go, oh, okay, but I mean, sure. I did really enjoy this one. As I said, I finished it very quickly. And yeah, I did tab it a little bit. I'm not a huge tabber though. I'm mainly just like an underline kind of person. So the next book I want to talk about is on loan with my friend at the moment. It's called Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth. Sally Hepworth is an Australian author, so if you're wanting to find anything that's more Australian based, supporting, you know, our little Australian author club, I think that Sally Hepworth is a great choice. She does lots of mysteries, but they're not really taxing. I think that sometimes mysteries for me, mysteries and crime or horror, things like that, they're very emotionally and mentally draining on me. But for the two books that I've read by Sally Hepworth, I've read Darling Girls and another one that I have here called The Mother-in-Law. Darling Girls was the standout one that I bought on a whim. Because it was a new release. I just went, oh, okay, this looks good. I know that lots of people did not like it. I finished it in a day. I went poof, and it was done, and it had me hooked. I know that the friend that's reading it right now saying that she was also hooked on it, and that she couldn't believe what was going on and all the plot twists, all the changes. Basically, you've got these girls and they're in this foster home with this foster mum. I think eventually she ends up adopting all of them, and it's basically going through dual timelines, which is quite jarring for some people, but for I didn't notice it too bad. We go through their experiences in the past of how they're experiencing this adoption and like the abuses of this like crazy mother. And then later on in the present, there's bones found on the property, and it basically goes through this whole thing where they're not sure how the bones got there. The mother is presenting the three girls as like crazy people. She's saying that they're like, you know, they're insane. She had nothing to do with it. She's trying to get back in touch, and it's going through those mental things, how they're thinking. There's one girl that can't really get over the fact that that's her mum, that's the lady that adopted her. She has that special connection, whilst the other two are a little bit more disconnected. And I thought it was just really interesting, and one of those key mystery books that kind of hold on to you and you're like, oh. The next book that I wanted to talk about, Magnolia Parks. So I have the whole series. I was able to get their original covers, not those recovers that everyone has been hating on. I got them on Amazon, so I think that they may be sold out by now in terms of these original covers, but I'm sure you could have a look. Magnolia Parks is about Magnolia and her relationship with BJ Ballantyne, based in England too. It's also like she is very rich. It's kind of also, it was described as Gossip Girl, but set in London, which is also critical because he is really photographed a lot, and she is like very stylish. She's got lots of different clothes all the time, and she can name a name what a shirt is called as soon as she sees it, that kind of thing. And so that kind of otherworldly aspect where, you know, obviously not all of us are going to be able to, you know, be photographed all the time, and not all of us are going to be able to be socialites, but we can feel like we are. It's basically, when I was getting recommended this, it was described as like reality television, which I think is quite a good name for it, a good way to say it. I thought of it more as a literary fiction. I don't think it would be a romance. It's got a romance undertone. You've got lots of different love interests in this one, which that's kind of what makes it feel a bit like reality TV, because you've got so many different characters and so many different relationships, so many different feelings going on. But I know lots of people fell in love with this book, and I did as well. I finished it in a day, considering, how long is it? It's over 400 pages, and that is quite a chunky book for me. I read it in this physical copy and on my Kindle. The Kindle was a lot better because this is quite a heavy book for me. And basically, yeah, you're following these two people, and they go in between things. They have a very dysfunctional relationship. He's a cheater, she dates around, but she also has this emotional connection to him, and it has like lots of different underlying tones, and what's going on is basically the question that I was asking myself, like, how did they get to this point? And so, yeah. Next book I want to talk about is also on loan with a friend. It's called Happy Place by Emily Henry. I think it goes without saying, Emily Henry is she's quite up there on my favourite authors. And so Happy Place, you've got the two characters, and they're going through a breakup, and they're going on this last holiday trip with their friends whilst trying to hide their breakup at the same time. And there's not lots that go on, like it's not very key moments that are going through. You kind of just flow through the book, and that's what I think made me finish it in 2 days. Really cruisy, and I really just flowed through the book. I'm not going to talk about like the main plot points, just because it's such a unique book. I feel like I haven't read anything that's similar to that, and I think that is like the key takeaway that I took from it, is that I haven't read anything like this. And yeah, that's why I loved it so much. The next book I wanted to talk about is also on loan with a friend, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Again, she is really good at those insights into fictional characters that seem real. So Evelyn Hugo in the book she was a very famous actress, and she was renowned for having 7 husbands. This girl is writing a memoir on Evelyn Hugo, and Evelyn Hugo requests her very specifically, this journalist, and she says, I wonder why she's requested me so specifically, being such a renowned person that could have anybody they wanted to write the memoir, but she chooses this girl, and she's very confused. She goes in, she writes the memoir, she's excited to get all the gossip about why Evelyn Hugo had 7 husbands. There's a huge plot twist at the end, which I obviously won't say, but I went full reaction to the plot twist, and I was hooked, and I think I read it again immediately after I finished it, and went through all of those different nitbits that you find. It's also got lots of good representation. I feel like you've got lots of different cultures, lots of different cultural opinions. You've also got lots of different sexualities, if that hints you at anything that goes on in the book. I think that's really good to have that different representation. I have found that with Taylor Jenkins Reid, she does try to have a little bit of different cultural values within her books, and I think that makes it very interesting and a good way to be enjoying the book, but also seeing those deeper sides of it. And that's main things that I got from Evelyn Hugo, is that she tries to become the woman that Hollywood wants. She tries to become the woman that everybody else is wanting her to be, but she can't deny her culture. She can't deny her heritage. That's a small portion of the book. That's a small underlying tone throughout it, but I think that it's also very good, and it's a noteworthy point in the book. The next and final book I wanted to go through, I don't usually rate autobiographies, but this one stood out to me. I read it through audiobook and it was narrated by the author, by the autobiographer, and that is I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I won't say it's a 5-star book because it is her story, and coming out with all of that thing that went on with Nickelodeon recently, all those things that were coming out, Jeanette really dropped the bombshell in this book. She really undid everything that she's everyone's childhood, and she's going through all of these things and people had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. And I think that that is a really telltale sign of all of the celebrities that we know, all of the celebrities that we love. We don't really know what's going on. And so basically it's just a recount of all these different things that went on whilst she was in Nickelodeon, whilst she was being pressured with all these different things. It has lots of different triggers, so maybe look that up before you read this book. But being an autobiography, I found it very poetic and very moving, and doing it with the audiobook, it's read by Jeanette. You can feel those emotions that she's having whilst she's reading or whilst she's writing it in this sense. And it's very good. But it's also quite funny, but there are moments that hit you pretty hard. So that's the one I wanted to end on today because it is such a unique book to have. Alright, well, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys got some lovely book recommendations and things that you would like to read in the future. Let me know if you like this kind of content, if you're wanting to see more from me. I am trying to get into it more. I'm trying to be more social on camera. I'm trying to become the YouTubers that I love, the booktubers that I love. And of course, we've got lots of different hobbies going on this channel. So if there's anything that you're not particularly fond of, anything that you're not particularly liking, I suggest that maybe just give everything a go. And that's why I have so many hobbies that I like to do. I like to do my reading. I like to do lots of different things. And yeah, so I hope that you're going well. I hope that your day is going well. I hope the rest of your day goes well. And love you all. Bye. I'm not sure how to do an intro just yet.